I'm Beck Wilson, and this is the first ever industry briefing that we've done on the Epic Retirement Tick. Today I'm joined by Ian Fryer from Chant West. We're co-founders of this tick, Ian.
It's really exciting. It's been great to see how consumers, but also funds, have responded to the tick and really keen for the next stage.
It is exciting, and we are going to talk you through the next stage of the tick today. That's why we have put this briefing together, because in rooms all around Australia, we know that super funds are trying to figure out how to get the tick, or at least we hope they are. And we want you to understand the methodology behind the criteria, how we're assessing the tick in this next phase, and how you can work hard for your consumer members and get yourself a tick so that they know you're retirement ready. This assessment framework has been developed together. We've sat together over many hours and thought about what goes into the tick. We've also worked with a huge number of people in the industry and taken feedback on the tick. And maybe you could share a little bit about the feedback you've taken in over your journey in the last year.
We've spoken to lots of people. We've spoken to funds. So every fund that got the tick, we had a fair bit of time with them explaining why they got it, but also some of the criteria where we think they could do better. Every fund that didn't get the tick, we actually met with them as well and talked through with them about where they fell short and what they needed to do. And it's been wonderful to hear a bunch of them saying, this is actually really helpful because we can then take this back to the business and we can focus on this stuff. So that's been really good to hear. But also as part of that, there's been some funds which might have said, have you thought of introducing this criteria or that criteria? And also we've spoken to lots of people in the industry to try to get an understanding of, okay, these criteria are good, but they can be better. What sort of things do we need to add? So you'll hear today there's a whole bunch of new stuff in there. The idea of this review is not to make it harder, but just to include a wider range of things that really impact consumers in the criteria.
And these things really do matter as we're heading towards retirement, because retirement is a completely different game. You know, Australian super funds have done really well at driving for performance in the accumulation phase, and we've measured them hard on that. And so the next phase of superannuation measurement, in my opinion, is about the other things that make up retirement as well as the performance. Performance doesn't go away, but it's not all about performance here, is it?
No, you could argue that leading up to retirement and accumulation, it is mainly about performance. And if you get that right, then you're doing pretty well. Because at the end of the day, that's what people need in accumulation. If everyone gets the same thing, the good My Super performance, that's great. But when you move to retirement, different people need different things. So we need to work out, how do we provide not just one really good thing to everyone? How do we provide really good things, and there's lots of different things to lots of people? That's actually a lot harder. So retirement is a lot harder than the accumulation piece. And that's one of the reasons why I think funds have been slower than some people might have wanted, but it's actually hard to do. There's lots of things you need to do to get this right.
And they're moving very large businesses. So,
yes,
but
that's right.
let's dive in quickly before we kick off walking through the criteria in a technical manner with why the tick exists, because I think this is important for both you and me. I started it, I must say, out of frustration. I had sat on the sidelines with the consumer for 2 years in retirement education, feeling like I was hearing the regulators say, but we need to make retirement important. And I was looking at the ads running on major media saying, we do retirement excellently. And I knew sitting inside that the difference between their version of excellent and what I would hope excellent is for the consumer was very different. And I thought, well, Treasury hasn't really put out principles at the time, so maybe I could find a really good partner to work with who could help me articulate what the consumer needs here. Because for me, this isn't just a technical criteria or an industry award. This is actually what I believe and what you believe the consumer needs. And we've worked really hard to get it there. And I think the consumer agrees.
Yes. Yeah. This has been really exciting for us because we typically have been working with the industry and with advisors to help them compare products and we assess products to help them understand whether they're good funds. But it's always been hard for us to interact with the consumer, but we know that's where the most exciting stuff is. They're the people who are actually benefiting from this, but we've never really been able to do that. But it's been so good working with you because we can now see that we can have an impact, we can have a window helping consumers make good decisions along these lines. So we find that really exciting.
Oh, thank you, Ian. And let's be blunt, there is a problem here in the industry that we need to talk about. A consumer can go to an advisor and very easily be offered a solution to invest their money in a number of different ways, right? Yeah. And a consumer can go to their own super fund and say, what do I need to do with my investments? I'm 55 today or coming into retirement. And the fund should be able to provide them with adequate guidance to help them on their journey. But in the middle, there's very few people left saying which fund is genuinely good for the consumer. And it really tends to come down to which advertising box is shouting the loudest. And I don't think for consumers that that's going to give them best interest duty.
Yeah. The tricky thing is super funds are large organisations and they do things sort of similar but sort of different. It's very hard for a consumer to compare one really product to another because, yes, you can look at performance, you can look at fees, but how do you compare the services they provide? And when you get to retirement, those services are just as important, maybe even more important than the performance part. How do you compare that? It's almost impossible for a consumer. So that's what we do. That's what we've done for many years. So that's the part that we can provide to be part of this and lift the lid a bit to show which funds are doing some really good stuff in retirement.
And from my side, the reason for doing this is the frameworking. Because when we teach somebody how to evaluate, we want to do it in a deeply consistent and organised way so that we're not jumping them around all over the place. They're not doing education that's unexpected and funds don't know what to expect and members don't know what to expect. For me, this is about educating them on what criteria can be assessed and to teach them to make their own decision around what's important. It's not just about who gets the tick. It's about which criteria within the tick are important to you as a consumer and how can you learn to evaluate what good is in your language. Because I think in the middle here where you're caught between advice and funds, and you want to stay in the fund market, there's choice. There's lots of choice and there's lots of diversity of services and products and there's going to be more, hopefully. So this is an exciting time. But Ian, I want to dive into the criteria today and we want to go into them in some detail. So this session should be around about 45 minutes in length for everybody out there. And we're going to work through the criteria. But Ian, can you give us an overview of the framework we've set up for 2026-27? Because we are changing things.
The first set of criteria we thought was pretty good, but we knew that was a first cut and we could include some other stuff. So this time, for example, and I'll give the details later on, we included things like cyber security and the level of complaints and a whole bunch of other stuff, which is really important. So we had 18 criteria before and now we've moved to 20. Previously, you had to get 12 of those 18. Now you need to get 14 of those 20. The other thing that we've done, and this was sort of implicit there before, we're making it a bit clearer now, we've split it into 3 parts. So one is product and design. The next one is education, guidance and advice. And the final one is service delivery. All of those 3 are important. It's important to have good product and investments. That's what people are buying. They're buying that product, they're buying that investments. But you can buy something and you've still got no idea how to use the thing. So that's where education, guidance and advice is really critical. So members can understand how they can use this stuff to achieve what they need to, what they want to in retirement. And the other part is service delivery. What we realise is that different services need to be able to be used by people in a really simple and easy way. So what can you do online? Just a click of a button, a member can do it. How long does it take to get answers on the phone? Are you on there for 20 minutes, half an hour? Hopefully not. Or is it really quick to get those answers? Because if it takes too long, people won't stay on the phone and they won't get those answers. So we think that service delivery is a really important part as well. So those 3 parts are important. And they were there before, but this time we've sort of split it out, made it explicit.
Very nice. There's now a new overarching criteria, isn't there, on the tick, because it's very important that we manage overall risk.
Yeah, true. So a number of funds now have an enforceable undertaking or additional licence conditions. We recognise that it's taken a fair bit for a regulator to come out and to say that they're applying these conditions. So initially we were sort of thinking, maybe a fund that has these conditions can't get the tick. What we're now saying though is often those license conditions especially, they say you have to do a few things. And until you do a few of those few things, we're going to keep the license conditions on. What can happen though is you actually do those few things and then you go back to APRA and then it can take quite some time for them to come back and say, yes, we'll release that. Or for example, there might be one question that they've got. So it can take a while from when you've actually fixed the stuff to when the license condition is taken off. And indeed, the license condition being taken off is generally not public. So it's something that you would know, but the public wouldn't. So what we're saying is, if you can demonstrate that the issues raised in APRA's license condition have been addressed, and you can demonstrate that through an independent report, which is often what you need to do for these anyway, then that allows you to be included. Because what we're concerned about is, yes, those issues need to be addressed, and if they've been addressed, that's great.
Yeah.
If APRA hasn't
Consumers' best interest.
That's right.
That's it.
If APRA hasn't put their stamp of approval on it yet, that's okay. It's actually been addressed. That's the main thing for us.
Yeah, that's right. So let's dive into the criteria. I want to start with Pillar 1, which is the category or the overarching category on product design and investments. We want to be explaining this to the consumer as though it's the things that the superannuation fund can do for them in a technical nature.
Yep.
And the first criteria within that is investment design and different portfolios for pension. Can you walk us through what you're looking for here?
Yeah. So in accumulation, when you're putting your money in, there's a whole range of investment options. In pension, in retirement, a lot of funds would just say, we'll just give you the same stuff. And while that could be okay, what we say is, look, it's a whole different tax environment. There's whole different needs in terms of liquidity, in terms of in retirement, you're going to have to take your money out, whereas in accumulation is coming in. So, and there's a range of other things as well in terms of risk, etc. So we think funds should be doing something to recognise that pension is different to super. So what we're looking for is at least one investment option, one diversified investment option that people could realistically invest just in that in pension. One diversified option that is really well suited to pension. That because of tax, because of liquidity, because of risk, really suits a pension member.
Nice. Is that the only criteria you'll be looking for in there?
Yes, that is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
On to number 2, Ian. We've got the next one is the performance of the investments, and we're looking only this time at the 70-30 option. We've changed this in this
Correct.
assessment.
So what we had last time, we had 2 criteria. We looked at, if you like, 50-50 option and the 70-30 option. So there were 2 criteria in there about performance. Our feeling was, look, does that give too much focus to performance? Indeed, in pension, performance is important, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's important as well. And indeed, we came up with probably about 5 or 6 new criteria that we wanted to include that we thought were important. Like, as I said before, complaints, cyber, etc. So we sort of think that, look, performance is important, but does it really need to be more important than anything else? Indeed, we're just looking at 1 or 2 investment options. But at the end of the day, it's not just the investment option that you're looking at. It's not just performance. It's how you know how to use that. So advice, guidance, etc., we see is really critical. The other thing that we've done this year is we've moved away from 10 years to looking at 7 years. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons for that is if a fund had poor performance, say, 8, 9, 10 years ago, how relevant is that someone to now? 7 years, I think, is long enough that it's looking at long-term performance. We're not looking at short-term, but we're not consigning someone or a fund that had poor performance a long time ago to continue to look bad in this. So we're trying to look for a balance there.
So 70-30 growth option is the only one we're assessing, and we're assessing it over 7 years.
Yeah, and we're looking at performance in pension. So in the pension phase, retirement phase. We're not looking at accumulation. We're looking at what's going to be good for someone to sit in if they're looking for a 70-30 option for a long time until they might be starting to draw down a lot of their money. They might go more conservative then, but a lot of members in retirement should be sitting in this option for at least some time.
Yeah, great. We're on to number 3, fees. And this one's important to talk about. We have a little bit of a change to the way we're assessing this one. Why don't you
Tiny
talk us through it?
change.
Tiny change.
Tiny
But
change.
I think that there's a technical nature to it, and I think
Yeah.
there's worth talking about.
Yeah. So we look at 5 different account balances, and we're looking for each of those account balances. Is your fund are at least 3 of those 5 balances, are you below the median or equal to the median or below the median? The change this time, though, is there's sometimes some funds might have been like 0.1, 0.2 basis points, not percent, but basis points above the median. So that meant they didn't get the tick for this. We sort of think, oh, come on, that's a bit too close. So what we're saying is for each of the balances, are you either equal to the median, below the median, or within 1 basis point of the median? If you are, then you can get the tick for that balance. And if you get 3 of those, you get the tick for this criteria. We think that's just a bit fairer. It's not so blunt an instrument.
No, and we want this to be fair. If I break that down, it's $100,000, $250,000, $500,000, $750,000, and $1 million balance. And you need at least 3 of 5 to be below the median or within 1 basis point of the median, to be technical there.
Yep.
Let's talk about the next one, retirement bonus. This is an important one.
So super funds, when you move from accumulation to retirement, there was all this money that was taxed, the earnings were taxed, but when you move to retirement, it's not taxed anymore. And there was some of the money in your account which is unrealised capital gains. And the unit price or the crediting rate that you take over into pension, that assumes that that's all been taxed. What actually happens, though, is those unrealised capital gains, they're transferred to pension and there's no tax paid on them. So the retirement bonus is a fund trying to say, well, we recognise that there's an amount of unrealised capital gains that you're transferring across that effectively in your account balance and accumulation you've paid tax on. But we as a fund don't need to pay tax on that. So we should pass that back. Now, they're not trying to look at exactly to the cent how much is in there for you, because that would be very difficult. But what funds can do is they can look and say, look, on average, it might be something like 0.6% or 1% that when you move from accumulation to pension, we will give you that additional amount to take into account that tax issue. So we think it makes a lot of sense. There's an equity issue here. That money probably should be going to the people who transfer, whereas a lot of the time it's just spread throughout the whole membership. That tends to be what happens to it. This retirement bonus, I think, is doing it properly. What we're also, though, saying is if you don't have a retirement bonus, but you haven't just got median performance over the past 7 years, but top quartile, we sort of think, well, you shouldn't be penalised for not having a retirement bonus if your performance is top quartile over the past 7 years.
Yeah, and I think that's a reality, and we came up with that last time because in all reality, if you're getting more back by staying with that fund every year, and you end up in a better place, I don't think we should be penalising those funds for having chosen that path, as long as the member is not worse off. The next one that we've got to talk about is lifetime product. And we've now got 2 criteria in the overall criteria connected to the lifetime income line. And this is a big jump because as we see in the Treasury guidelines, this is becoming more and more important. And it's something that a lot of funds are slow to move on.
Yep. Last time we had, do you have a lifetime product? Some funds have a lifetime product, but very few people go into it.
They don't market them in some funds. They have them, but they don't market them very actively.
I think some funds maybe aren't quite sure how to market them and what sort of members they're for, but funds need to do the work to understand what sort of members are these for, these products. So we want to see that there's a lifetime product that pays an income for the rest of a member's life. Now, that can be a traditional annuity, which is either fixed amount or it could be CPI, or it could be some sort of investment-linked product, which we're seeing a lot more of, and more come out all the time. It's actually quite exciting to see that there's now a wave of these products coming in. And I think the Treasury guidelines and the Retirement Income Covenant is starting to get some teeth, and funds realising we do need to do something about this. It's not just that, there's maybe only 5% of our members who could benefit from something like this, 5% of our retiring members. Well, if they could benefit from it and you're not providing it, then should they go somewhere else? Well, the fund doesn't want them to go somewhere else. They want to keep them. So provide what they need. So really all funds need to provide something like this in the next little while. But what we're also saying is it's not good enough just to have a product. First of all, you need to have people going into it. You need to have some people going into it.
We're going to measure that, aren't we? We're going to ask you to provide data on how many are going in.
How many are going in. And a big part of that in terms of getting people to go into it is education, guidance and advice about these products. And we want, if there is advice, we don't want it to be, say, a $5,000 advice job. We want it to be $1,500 or less advice to get into one of these products. What we're looking for is education, guidance or advice that helps members specifically on whether to use a lifetime product and how to use a lifetime product. Because a lot of times it won't be just, yes, I should be using this, but probably that with an account-based pension. And how do you combine the two? So, and the answer to that is probably going to be different for each person. So there needs to be education, guidance and advice on this sort of stuff, as well as how the product works, who it's appropriate before, and as I said before, how to use it. And we want to see all that done in an engaging way. Don't just put a massive text on a web page and say, go there. No, we can use videos, we can use charts, we can use a whole bunch of stuff to help people understand how this works.
Very much, very much. It gets me very excited. And so that's a separate criteria from lifetime income. We are now at criteria number 6, and we have broken the education and guidance out so that you can see it as a separate thing to look for and provide validation on.
Yeah, so having a lifetime product is criteria number 5. And education, advice and guidance on that lifetime product, separate one, number 6.
Nice.
Both are important.
Now we're up to number 7, drawdown strategies. And this one gets me very excited. In fact, I got an email yesterday from somebody in my community who had used the tick last year and had done my course and said, why don't you add something about understanding how to draw down your money to the tick? And I'm like, oh, you're on it. We're already here.
It was already there last year.
Yeah, it was. But I think we also, they want more. They want more. Okay. They want nudges. They want information. Yes. People want to know how their super works to create money, right? Yeah. And they want both the mechanics of a product to do it.
Yes.
But they also want the help. And, you know, that's why we've got 2 criteria in here now on these things.
Yeah. So I think with drawdown strategies, so many people will take the minimum, whether it's 50%, 40%, as the numbers are large. And some of those people that made a deliberate choice, I just want to take the minimum. And there's a whole range of reasons why you might want to do that. But there's a whole bunch of people who just think, well, I don't know what I should be doing, so I guess I'll take the minimum. And indeed, on application forms, we say, do you want to take the minimum or do you want to do something else? And people think, well, I don't know what something else is, so I'll take the minimum.
Even if they get advice, they have to then figure out what number to put in that box on their own usually.
Yes. So we need to help them. We need to help them understand not that the minimum is wrong, but to think about, could I take more than the minimum? So that could be things like, there could be a product feature. So some funds have a product feature which says, look, rather than taking only 4% to age 65, which is pretty low and your earnings are going to be much higher than that, maybe you can take 6%. So in that case, you just tick the 6% box. That's actually really easy. So there can be some product feature stuff like that. Some are more sophisticated where that percentage changes each year. And there's one fund which does a great job where they've worked out how much you need to take out each year so that by the time you get to your life expectancy plus 5 years, you'll have done your dash.
Yeah.
So
nice. That's true really safe spending.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a true safe spending calculation, and we do teach people about that. I must say that's
right.
something
and the other part we look at here is looking at nudges. So how are you nudging people and saying, look, you might have a product feature, you might not, but you can still nudge people and say, okay, here's what you're getting this year in terms of income. You may be able to take out more. How do I know whether that's the case? There might be a link to a calculator, or even just asking the question. Call us on the phone. We can lead you through what you need to think about. So product feature or some sort of communication nudge.
I love it. I love it. And then the last criteria in product is number 8, and that is different retirement income solutions by cohort. This is leaning right on over into the Treasury guidelines, isn't it? Right down the lane.
They're all about this. And it's by cohort, but it could potentially be by individual as well. Oh. So what we're looking for here is, are you offering different solutions? And those solutions could be different products or combinations of products, but also different service offerings like full advice, like simple advice, etc. Are you offering different solutions for different groups of members? Super funds know a lot about their members. There's a lot you can do with that data to understand each member and how they'd be best placed in retirement, but also moving into retirement. So it'd be great if we could look at groups of members, maybe even by individuals, and work out what do we think's best for this member, and then present that to them. There may still need to be some sort of advice conversation, but rather than just saying you're on your own, this can be really helpful. There's a lot of discussion about can there be some sort of soft defaults. So for each member, there's a suggestion made to them. There's questions about how possible that is now, but I think we need to move in that direction, because otherwise there'll still be a whole bunch of people who are using their superannuation money in a way that doesn't make the most of what they've got. And that's really sad.
Even if we aren't at soft defaults as a country yet, acting like we're here to solve for them.
Yeah,
and
that's
solve
right.
for what people
Yes.
could need and could be helpful for them would be a wonderful
Absolutely.
thing, I think.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to education, guidance and advice. This is the second overarching category that we've built into the criteria this year. And number 9 is simple, affordable retirement planning for an individual. Do you want to explain this? Because I know this one, hit a few bumps for a couple of funds last year, and I want to explain why. I feel very passionate about the fact that we expect funds to provide good quality individual advice, not just a pre-sell on a paid advice envelope, right?
Yep. So simple, affordable retirement planning. If someone has a fairly simple situation, they're not looking at complex estate planning, they don't have all these investments that they want to keep and want to be part of a financial plan. They just want to know, I'm moving into retirement, I've got a certain amount of money. How should I invest it? What investment option should it be in? How much can I take out each year in a sustainable way, and how much age pension am I going to get? Those 3 things, they're the 3 things you really need to know. Those last 2, you add those together, and that's your income. That's your wage, your salary for the rest of your life. So what a number of funds do is they provide a solution which might be called a retirement health check, and it answers the question, am I on track to get this amount of money? And their answer is yes or no. It's sort of binary. And there are some charts, etc., but it takes a lot to interpret those. What we want is that there's a piece of advice that says, here's how I recommend you invest. Here's how much you can draw down in your first year. Here's how much age pension you'll get. So here's how much money you'll be able to get. And then you can actually take those numbers and you can put it on the application form. And that should be as easy as it. So it should be that easy.
Yeah. And it shouldn't take you in a different direction to not give you quite that much information, right?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
And for this time, so we used to call it simple advice. Now we call it simple, affordable retirement planning, because you can provide simple advice but still charge a high fee. And it might be really good advice, but you don't need all that stuff. So what we're saying is it needs to be affordable. So we had last time a maximum of $1,000. We've kept that in there. The biggest difference perhaps this time is we're saying, look, last time we had a separate digital advice offering. And now we're saying, look, you can provide simple, affordable retirement planning. You can do it over the phone. You can do it digitally. You can even do it hybrid, so that someone starts off in a digital environment, but then they think, oh, I just need to talk to someone. And they click a button and can either chat to someone then or can make an appointment or something like that. So we're saying, in some ways, it's not so important how you do this, but you've got to do it in some way. Yeah. You've got to provide simple, affordable retirement planning in some way, whether it's digital, whether it's on the phone, a bit of both, Teams meetings, whatever. Do it in some way, please.
And the key is, at the end, that there's clear instructions for implementation and some usage of this advice service. You can't just plan one and stick it in the back room and say you got it. You've got to show that people are using it. You've got to promote it to the members. There has to be some level of uptake.
Some level of uptake, and you need to be clear what to do with this. There needs to be an SOA, which says it's very clear. Here's what you need to do. Some funds I'm actually seeing now, it's an SOA that is an interactive document, and you can say, okay, here's one recommendation. Click on this link to do it. How good's that?
It's the big green button
Exactly.
that David Bell talks about.
That's
I love
right.
the big green button.
We need to make it easy for members to do stuff. And often because of the legislation, regulations, can be hard. But when we can, let's make it easy.
Yeah, I think so too. And then the next step up from there is simple, affordable retirement planning for a household.
Yes.
Talk us through that one.
Yeah, well, that's very similar, but it's just looking at a household rather than individual. We're saying here, I think last time we had $1,500 as the maximum. This time we're looking at $2,000. We think that's probably more realistic. We're not just looking for something where you can include your partner so you can see how much age pension you'll get together, but we're also wanting just strategic advice for what they have. So they're not going to get advice saying you should do this, that and the other with stuff that's outside the fund. That's not going to work. But they should be able to get advice saying, okay, you as a couple, here's the assets that you got, here's the super that you've got, and here's what you can do with it. So our super system is built on individuals, but a lot of people's lives moving into retirement are built off households. So we need to be doing better in that space.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you ask funds for the information submission, you actually get them to submit full examples and demonstrations of this stuff too. You're not just flying blind with a fund, ticking a box and saying, we do this, don't worry about us.
That's right. This is the case for so many criteria. We ask a fund, do they do it, or how well do they do it, what's their service standard, etc. But we also ask for proof. We say, send us a statement of advice to show what someone gets for this so that we make sure they're getting what they need.
It's great. I love it. The true assessment of this is everybody out there that's wondering in the industry whether or not it's truly done. It's so transparent. We want you to see right inside the criteria and the assessment. Yeah. Number 11 is access to comprehensive advice. And this is important because there's 3 sub-criteria on this one, and you need to provide all 3 through either internal or external advisors. Walk us through the 3.
Okay. Well, I'll step through the internal, external first, because there's 2 ways of doing comprehensive advice. One is you can provide your own advisors, and you might have a team of 20 advisors, and they provide advice to your members. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is saying, look, advice is not, especially comprehensive advice, that's not our core business. We'll get external advisors to do that. So there's 2 ways of doing this, and it's not like one's wrong and one is right. They're just different ways of doing it. What we're saying is we don't care which way you do it, but we just want there to be, number 1, access to that sort of advice, and access to a range of advice, like not just super, but if someone needs more than super, if they need some help with estate planning or insurance or something, then either internally or externally, you need to have some ways that people can deal with that. The second thing is, if an advisor, either an internal advisor or an external advisor that you've been referred to, need to be able to get information about you. What sort of balance have you got? What investment options are you in? Because they need that information to advise. So what we're wanting is some sort of online portal that the advisor can log into with your authorization, of course, so that they can provide that advice. And the final thing is that advice fees, especially, particularly the fees that relate to the advice around superannuation can be deducted from your account, so you're not having to take it out of your pocket. There might be some additional advice that you ask for that's not inside super that may need to be paid for outside of super. But what relates to super, ideally it's paid from the account. That actually makes it much more likely that members will use the service.
Absolutely. It gets me excited when members know that too, and that they know they can come looking for it. Tools and calculators is number 12, and we've expanded this one. We're now looking for you to provide at least 3 of 4.
That's right.
So that is one more than we had in the last
Used to be 2 of 3. And the first 3 are similar to what they were before. The one difference is that for the retirement calculator, rather than saying you just got to have one, we're saying it needs to be at least as good as, in terms of functionality, as a Money Smart calculator. So it's not just having a calculator, that's sort of like the minimum level. So that's the only difference to the first 3. So
let's run them all. So you've got to provide a retirement income calculator for members approaching retirement that incorporates all retirement products offered. So that's a change. That is a tweak.
True. If you've got a lifetime product, that needs to be in there as well. You can't ignore it.
Yeah, and I think that's valuable because that'll also go against that lifetime education tick.
Yep.
And it needs to be at or above Money Smart's functionality. You need to provide an income drawdown calculator for those in retirement. This is starting to become a really important thing for people to be able to access. They don't understand how to spend.
Yep. There's hardly any funds that do this, but it's so important.
No, so 3 out of 4. You can still get there, but we want you to try
Yeah,
and chase these.
Yep.
Provides a retirement budgeting tool with different levels of spend for each category based on ASFA's Money Smart. Provides retirement. We want you to provide a retirement budgeting tool with different levels of spend for each category based on the ASFA modest or comfortable benchmarks. They're the industry standards, so let's own it and go with it. And it could be either in a calculator or just as a separate tool. Doesn't matter, just so long as something's there to help you budget. And then the last one is providing access to an online service to calculate your age pension entitlements.
Yes.
Could be internal or external, but it needs to be clearly offered, right?
It needs to be there. And if you've got it external, it needs to be a prominent link. You can't hide it somewhere. It needs to be a prominent link because there's some good third-party providers that do this, so you may not need to build it yourself. And you might say, well, that's already in the main calculator. That's in the retirement calculator. But some people may just want to know, how much age pension am I get? Do they have to go through the whole retirement income calculator to find that out? And also there's some further smarts. If it's just age pension calculator, you can put a lot more smarts in there because it's focused on that and that alone.
Yeah, and I love a good simple pension calculator. Gets everyone excited. Let's jump into 13 retirement-focused nudges. And this one requires you to provide at least 2 out of the 3 to a high quality. I love that you're adding the standard expectation here, Ian.
Yes. So the first one is, do you have retirement income projections on your statement? And that's more, do you have it or not? But we still want that to be highlighted. We don't want it to be hidden away on the back page. We still want it to be presented well, because arguably that could be the most important thing on that statement. The next thing is perhaps more about quality. We talk about retirement-focused nudges to increase awareness of the adequacy of retirement, of someone's adequacy of their retirement income, but also actions to improve it. So this is where we don't want a fund just to say, have you thought about how much you'll need in retirement? That might be a nudge, but you have to go further than that. It's like, have you thought about this? Here's some ways to think of it. You might even have some case studies. Here's someone like you. Here's what they did. And there might be links to calculators. There might be links to videos and a whole bunch of other stuff to help you think it through. So we're looking for that. And then the final one that we're looking at this time, and this is a new one, is nudges to members who are over 65 to consider transferring to pension. Because there's a lot of people over 65, they're still in accumulation and they're paying 15% tax on their earnings. They could shift across to pension and they wouldn't pay tax on their earnings. So we're not telling people they need to do it, but just, did you know that you can do this? So that sort of a nudge can make a big difference to people.
And I think that's something we're seeing evolve in the industry right now, a real conversation about whether we should be defaulting members into a pension. And I think if we're starting to offer them the option, defaults won't be as scary a concept.
Yeah, that's starting to move in that direction, which we need to.
Let's have a chat about 14 now, Ian. Retirement seminars and structured education. We need to do at least one of these.
One of these really...
An area very close to my heart, I have to admit. And, for me, that's why Ian assesses this, not me, because, I have high standards.
I have high standards too.
He has high standards too. But for me, these are an area I think, we don't talk about enough. We need to teach members how to do retirement. It's really hard and scary for a lot of people.
Yeah. Education is critical. And we've got 2 different ways you can do it. You can do seminars or webinars where you're presenting and it's someone from your fund presenting, and you're presenting on here are the things you need to think about when you're approaching retirement. And that's going to include financial super matters. Could be other things as well in terms of retirement. Another way of doing it is having some sort of online education modules where it's more like self-serve. But once again, we want this to be quite comprehensive. We don't want there to be just one video on retirement. We want there to be a number of modules that someone can work through so that they can learn what retirement is about, so they can learn how to use their super effectively. So we're looking for either that to be done in seminars or webinars or some sort of structured education program. Education is critical. And indeed, even if someone gets advice, an educated person getting advice, they're going to be able to work out what they should do as well. Like, advisor can say you should do this. They might say, well, but in my situation, ... So
I think that's increasingly important. What we're seeing is all these different choices people hit from midlife onwards that are related to whether they're going to have a good retirement. Right? Or an epic retirement in my terms. But they're going to make these choices. They're probably only going to make a lot of these choices once. And there's not very many easy ways to undo it if you make the wrong choice. So we're better off helping members understand their options, their choices, the way the systems work, the way they can make the best out of it early, and then help them navigate the choice as they're hitting them as well.
That's right.
And you know, they are really important opportunities for your members, but they're also really scary minefields for real people who have never had to do this stage of life before.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And if you get advice and you know a bit and you know what you're looking for, the advice is probably going to be a whole lot more helpful and a whole lot more appropriate rather than just saying, I don't know, can you tell me?
Yeah. And then you possibly don't implement,
which
just breaks my heart.
Yes.
Well, everybody's heart who's involved in the industry of advice as well, because they put so much work into providing good advice. So very important. And then, so within that, so Ian, that gets us to the bottom of the education list. We're now moving into service delivery.
Yep.
And I don't want to rush over this. You know, we want to keep it tight, but I want to talk about number 15, because we've changed a lot of the service delivery criteria. We've really invested ourselves in them. You know, there was some skepticism out there in the market that it was important to have a call centre giving good return times. There was talk in feedback loops that, you know, some of these criteria were not important if you were advised. Well, I have to argue, I think it's more important than ever that you can get service.
Absolutely.
That you can get online service, that you can get offline service, that you can trust your fund to deliver. And we're going to keep putting pressure on his. Let's run through number 15. We want to see a whole lot of actions are able to be done online. This is a real shift for funds that haven't been delivering a lot of their retirement services online up until now. And so you've got a list of 5 things that you now want to assess, and 3 out of the 5 we're going to require are done online now.
Yeah. So the question is, what are those 5? The 5 are non-lapsing binding nomination of beneficiaries, joining a pension. You should be able to join online, not fill in some sort of hard copy form. If you want to change your regular income, that should be easy. You should be able to do that online. If you want to commute an existing pension and then start a new pension account, there might be some more money coming in, then that should be able to do online in a single process rather than, okay, there's 3 or 4 things you've got to do. Single process, please. And then finally, if someone wants to take money out of their pension account, some sort of ad hoc withdrawal, that should be able to done online as well.
I don't disagree. I think, in fact, I can't wait for the day when all funds offer all 5 online.
That would be wonderful.
You know, we're not gonna push you that hard in year.
No, 3 out of 5.
2.
That's reasonable.
3 out of 5 is a good start, and then you know we're going to tighten these up over future years, aren't we?
Yep.
Number 16, we want to look at service levels and performance against those service levels, and we've got 5 criteria here as well. Do you want to walk us through these? Because again, you're requiring 3 out of 5 for the most widely used of these criteria.
Yep. And this time we want to measure not just what your SLA is, but what the performance is. And we want both of those to be within 3 days. We think these days, 3 days should be long enough to do these sorts of things. So what are the criteria? Setting up a new pension product when someone is already in the super division. Setting up a new pension product when someone is new to the fund. Changing regular income. So if someone wants to do that, and perhaps it's not through doing it online, but through some other form, how long does that take? Commuting that pension and starting a new pension account, how long does that take? And finally, making that ad hoc payment, how long does that take? We think all of those, it's reasonable that it should be 3 days or less, both in your SLA, but also in your actual performance. But we're saying 3 out of those 5, that's what we're looking for. At least 3 out of 5 of those is done within 3 days.
Very nice. Number 17, contact centres, an area close to my heart, as many of you will have read the article I wrote on it. And the average answer time you're looking for is less than 75 seconds or 75% of calls in 2 minutes with a less than 5% dropout rate. Can you talk us through what you're looking for technically here?
Yeah, okay. So our standard last time was 75% of calls in 2 minutes. So that's three quarters in 2 minutes. 2 minutes when you're on the phone is a long time. So we think there should be 3/4 done in that time. But some funds don't measure along those lines. They sort of measure average speed of answer. So the average speed of answer, we had that as 90 seconds. We thought that was equivalent, but we think perhaps that's a bit high. To be consistent with the 75% in 2 minutes, it's sort of more like 75 seconds. So if you've got an average answer speed of 75 seconds, that's fine. So whatever your standard is, if you can meet one of those 2. And the other thing is we want less than a 5% dropout rate. 5% dropout rate is you've got 1 in every 20 people who are calling up and want some help. They're giving up and saying, I've had enough. That's not good. There's always going to be some dropouts, but that needs to be lower than 5%.
Well, let's be honest, it's hard for people to pick up the phone to their super fund. It's
Yes.
scary. It's something that we have to goad and coax them to do.
It's a big move, and when they do it, they need to have a good experience. And the start of the good experience is being answered in a reasonable period of time. So for the contact centre, you need to do both of those. Have a decent wait time and dropout rates not too high.
I like that. Number 18, efficiency of our pension payments. This is, again, a 3-part criteria, and we need to have 2 of the 3. Talk us through them.
Yep. The first one is that time from request of an ad hoc payment until payment is 3 days or less. We actually saw that before, but we think it's important here as well. The other 2 are, how does the fund pay payments for pension payments or ad hoc payments? When I pay some money to you, if I wanted to pay some money to you, I go to my bank and it goes through an OSCO system, which means that you can see within seconds. Most funds, it might take a day or 2. Does it really have to be that way? Shouldn't super funds be using the OSCO system so that as soon as they pay it, it appears in someone's account? That's what we're looking for as the second one. And the third one is there might be some times where you just need to get some money from your super and you need it today. Is that possible? A number of funds do this, but a number of funds don't. There should be a way that if you need the money today, you can get it. Now, we have to be careful about cyber stuff, etc. So we don't want to get rid of all those safeguards. But if you need some money today, and there might be some maximums as well, like maybe you can't take all your money out, but you can take something out, which could be really helpful. So we've got 3 criteria here, at least 2 of those 3 to get the tick for this criteria.
Lovely. Number 19 is complaints, because I think we don't want to be issuing a blind tick and then reading about complaints that a fund's getting. So I think we have to take this into consideration.
Yep.
And we're looking across 4 complaints criteria,
Yep.
and we're looking for 3 out of 4.
Yep, 3 out of 4. The first one is the level of complaints is not too high.
Percentage based.
That's right, percentage base of members. A really big fund's going to have lots of complaints. But if there's a percentage of members that's not too high, then they're doing fine.
Yeah.
So what's the percentage of members who are making complaints? When those complaints are made, how long does it take to resolve them? There's a regulation which really requires funds to have them resolved within 45 days. What percentage are not being done within 45 days? Sometimes when the complaint can't get resolved, it needs to go to AFCA. What's the percentage that are going to AFCA? Because we don't want that to be too high either. And then finally, we're looking at for internal dispute resolution. So that's the team that deals with complaints. What's your resourcing like that? Your resourcing as, say, per 100,000 members, because that's going to feed into how quickly a fund is dealing with complaints as well. So we've got those 4 pieces, and we're wanting these to be median or better, or around median anyway, to enable someone to get the tick for the complaints. So if you get a tick for complaints, you're dealing with complaints well.
Nice. And the last criteria is cybersecurity and fraud prevention. And there's 3 criteria here, but you're handling them a little bit differently. Take us through.
Yes, okay. When we first did the tick, we thought it was important to have some sort of cyber category, cybersecurity. But oh my goodness, how do you assess that? So we spend a lot of time chatting to a lot of people to work out how do you assess what a fund is doing in terms of cybersecurity. So the first criteria we look at in here is you have to do this as well as either the second or the third. So the first one is all about external certification of your cyber security protections that you're providing to your members. And we're wanting to see that is done at least every 2 years, or when we ask people, it's been done in the last 2 years. So the key is it's external. You're not just saying, oh, we've done a review ourselves and it's all fine. An external group has certified, and there's a few things you can do with this. There's something called CORI, which some of the big banks and some of the big wealth managers look at, which is connected to RBA, etc. There's also ISO 27001. Have you been certified by an external group for that? And also NIST. So NIST is a framework, and we wanted to see people be at least NIST 2.0 in order to get the tick for that. So this is external certification at a particular level. The other 2...
And you have to get that one. You
have to get that one.
If you don't get it, you don't get the tick.
That's right.
That one.
Yeah. And this is really putting the focus on cyber is a growing risk.
Well, once you're drawing down your money, you are an absolute target.
That's why. So is this as important in accumulation? Well, yes, it's important, but it's so much more important
Your bank
in
account's
retirement.
linked now.
Exactly.
Your
exactly.
bang, it's
That's
open, right?
That's right. So there's that. And then the other two, you've got to get one of these two. One is Green ID or some sort of other secure online ID for digital identity verification, because we need to have ways that are secure for ID, for identification, when we're setting up pension accounts and drawing money from banks, etc. So that's really important. So we want that to be secure and good. And then finally, multi-factor authentication. We want to see it on login and also on a range of other high-risk activities, like things like I want to draw some money out, an ad hoc withdrawal. Money's going out. You've got to make absolutely sure that is the right person. Similarly, changing payment details, changing the bank account it's going to. Got to make absolutely sure that that's right. And also, if there's a change to the power of attorney are very powerful. If there's a change to that, there should be multi-factor as well. So the first criteria, which is about external certification, you need that. And then one of the last second or third items.
Nice. And overarching, I think we'd like to see you have all of them over time.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But look, I guess we're at the end. That's 20. And I just want to finish today with a little bit of a reflection on why we've created the tick. Because ultimately, we created this tick to try and support consumers on their journey into retirement so that they can choose something that they can understand. You know, they can make a selection from a list of funds that might well be working hard for retirement. And we've limited the visibility of the ticks, right? We've gone into this and we've only shown the ticks that are available on funds above the 12 this year.
Right. Yep.
And I think that's worked really well. It's meant it's not a negative conversation about what my fund got.
Yep.
It's about who got the tick, and there's a reason for that. You know, we both feel very values oriented. This is a positive discussion that you can strive for as a fund, and that we're not chasing you in. You're chasing yourself in. You're chasing your members in, because some of this is about retention as well as member attraction as you come into the retirement phase. And funds that don't make the journey towards retirement, we do see as potentially taking the risk that their members may not come with them on the journey over time, don't we?
Yeah, but those funds that haven't made the tick, the level of engagement I found from those funds talking through how they're going was really exciting.
It is exciting.
Because those funds were saying, look, maybe we should do these things. And actually, the Epic Retirement Tick could be a good way for us to show we need to do this as a business. So really excited.
That's been exciting to see the business cases get up this year, and to hear the stories from the market about how much more progress they're able to have when there's an independent view of what we should do.
Yeah, that's right.
In the room.
So I'm really looking forward to August and September, where we get the information back from the funds and we can see what they're doing. And I'm really expecting there'll be a bunch of funds that have moved forward in a number of areas. And that's really good, because that means those funds are doing a better job for their members in retirement.
That's the whole reason we're here. Now, what is the process from here, Ian? We are March now. We are deliberately releasing the criteria in March, and we will do this every year. As we said, we will review the criteria every year. So if you've got input and feedback, we're not applying it to this year's, we're applying it to next year's. But for us, we'll be assessing against this criteria from now, if you would like to, but we're doing a major release of the criteria when? Walk us through.
Yeah, so we will ask for information from all the funds that we think have some sort of hope of getting there, so all the funds that we looked at last time, all of which do a number of these criteria. So we'll be asking for information according to this new criteria from all those funds, and we'll be doing that probably late July, something like that, getting it back sort of late August, doing the analysis in September, and then releasing again early October.
Nice. And for everybody out there who has been looking at this criteria, hoping their fund would be able to creep towards it this year.
Yes.
For us, it is something that we will continue to assess. If you feel like you've got to before October and you feel a burning need to come after the tick, we will do one-off assessments, but they will be against this 20 criteria from now on.
Yes.
That is the important measure from this point onwards. And we will be communicating this criteria to consumers as well in a really detailed way. And if you don't get a tick, or you do get a tick, for us it's also about teaching the consumers how to evaluate the criteria for themselves, not just to look at it blindly and say, did or didn't get the tick, but to go looking inside the fund for the things your fund is doing well. And, I think that's an opportunity for you to narrate into this, whether you do get a tick or not, to your members, how you're going in the journey towards becoming better at retirement, because we do point out all the time to consumers that the journey to improve retirement standards in Australia and improve retirement services is something that we're encouraging and supporting, and that
absolutely.
It's going to take some time.
Yep, it takes time. In some ways, we have the easy job. We say, here's all the stuff you guys have got to do.
You got to do all the work.
You've got to do all the work. But we're encouraging you to do it because it's going to make a difference to thousands of your members. It's going to make a difference to what retirement looks like for them. And that's why we exist. That's why the superannuation industry exists.
It's exciting. And so that brings us to the end of our technical briefing. Thank you very much to Ian. You've done
Thanks,
an amazing job on this criteria again. It's going to be really exciting to see the funds come in for review and to understand who gets the tick again this year. And I know there'll be a lot of people watching when we announce.
Very much looking forward to it. Cool. Thank you.